Rain trickles down the windshield as the low hum of an engine fades into the distance. A delivery driver, face hidden beneath a soaked hoodie, stands in front of a quiet suburban house. The porch light flickers weakly, casting shadows that seem to move on their own. The air is heavy, dense with the sound of rain hitting pavement and the rhythmic ding. Ding. Ding of a doorbell pressed over and over again. The driver shifts uncomfortably, glancing around the empty street. No movement, no response, just the persistent echo of that doorbell, cutting through the night like a pulse. The narrator's voice enters slowly, deep, calm, deliberate. Feels less like someone telling a story and more like a whisper inside your head. They say every order has a destination, but not every destination wants to be found. The music creeps in, a low, vibrating synth paired with a distant, metallic heartbeat. The camera pans across rows of darkened houses, windows reflecting faint glows of phone screens, doors shut tight, locks trembling against the storm. In the distance, lightning flashes, illuminating the figure still standing, delivery bag clutched tightly, eyes wide with uncertainty. We see fragments, flashes of real footage, headlines floating across the screen. Delivery driver missing. Unexplained incident involving food app. Customer never found. Each one dissolves into static before fading to black. The sound of rain fades, replaced by a slow, echoing breath. The narrator continues, voice steady but unsettling. Every night, millions of us open our doors to strangers, sometimes for food, sometimes for something else. Behind each knock, each message, each delivery request, is a story waiting to be told. The scene shifts. We're now inside the house. The camera moves past the front door, through an empty living room. A half-eaten meal sits cold on the table, the television still playing an old commercial for a delivery app. The voiceover grows quieter. Tonight, you'll hear 8 true stories. Stories that started like any other delivery, and ended in ways no one could explain. A faint ring echoes again. Not from a doorbell this time, but from a phone. The screen glows. New order. Confirmed to deliver. The narrator takes a pause. The rain outside now replaced by silence. So sit back, keep your lights low, and remember, some doors were never meant to be opened. The final shot is the driver turning to face the camera, eyes dark and expression unreadable, before disappearing into the storm. A distant doorbell rings once more, cutting sharply into the next story. Marcus hated night shifts, but the app didn't care. Orders came in, payments trickled out, and silence filled the spaces in between. He was 23, broke, and driving an old Honda Civic that rattled every time it hit a pothole. That night, the glow from his cracked phone screen reflected on his tired eyes as he accepted one last order. A delivery to a new apartment complex on the outskirts of town. The name of the street didn't ring a bell. The building number didn't match any he'd seen before, but the app insisted it was real. Easy drop-off, 20-minute drive, $15 tip promised. He pressed accept. Fog rolled in thicker than smoke as he drove through the empty streets. The world outside his windshield looked like it was dissolving, swallowed by gray. His GPS glitched, rerouting every few minutes, guiding him in circles until he finally saw it. A tall, unfinished structure hidden behind scaffolding and half-lit floodlights. Shouldn't have been there. The pavement in front of it wasn't even paved yet. The mailbox out front read only 404. Marcus laughed nervously to himself. How fitting, he muttered, killing the engine. The cold air outside bit at his skin as he grabbed the takeout bag and stepped into silence. The building loomed like a skeleton. Wires dangling from the ceiling, drywall half-painted, elevators humming faintly as if waiting. He pressed the call button out of habit, and the elevator doors opened immediately. Inside, the panel was glowing softly. Only one button worked, the one marked 4. The rest were dark. Marcus hesitated but pressed it. The elevator doors slid shut, groaning as it ascended. The ride felt longer than it should. He checked his phone. No signal. Only the app still open, pulsing with a faint blue glow. Deliver to Unit 404. His heartbeat quickened. When the doors opened, the hallway ahead was dimly lit by a single flickering bulb. Each step echoed too loudly, like the sound of someone following him. He found the door to 404. A metal slab, no peephole, no welcome mat, just a dark surface reflecting his shadow. He knocked softly. No answer. He tried again, louder this time. The door creaked open on its own, revealing an unfinished room inside. Concrete floor, no furniture, and the faint smell of burnt wood. In the center sat a small table with a folded note and exact change placed neatly beside it. The note read, "Thanks for coming back." Marcus froze. He hadn't been here before. He was sure of it. Yet the handwriting on the note looked strangely familiar. The same looping M he'd used to sign his name in high school. He picked it up with trembling hands. The paper felt damp, old. The lights above flickered, and suddenly the door behind him shut. The room seemed to stretch, the hallway outside disappearing into blackness. The elevator dinged again, faintly, from nowhere and everywhere. Panic set in. He ran back to the door, pulling at it, pounding, shouting. The hallway looked endless now, repeating itself like a mirror reflecting into itself. Every door had the same number, 404. He finally burst through a stairwell door, bolting down the steps that never seemed to end. When he reached the ground floor, the lobby was gone. The fog had crept inside. The only thing visible was his car outside, engine still running, headlights cutting through the mist. He didn't remember starting it. He didn't even remember leaving the key in. Marcus sprinted, jumped in, and drove as fast as he could. His phone buzzed violently in the passenger seat. A new notification. Delivery completed successfully. Thank you for returning. He pulled over, heart hammering, staring at the message. Then another ping. The same order reappeared on the screen. Same address. Same instructions. Deliver to Unit 404. He turned off the phone and tossed it into the back seat. But from somewhere in the darkness behind him, his phone lit up again. Its robotic voice whispering through the static of the car radio. "You forgot the tip, Marcus." He looked into the rearview mirror, the fog behind him parting just enough to reveal a figure standing in the road, holding a glowing phone, smiling faintly. His own reflection smiled back. The radio crackled once more as the sound of an elevator door opening echoed faintly through the speakers. Then silence. Renee sat in her small car, the glow of the phone screen reflecting in her tired eyes. The dashboard clock blinked 11:47 p.m. She should have been home hours ago, but she needed the money. The delivery app's familiar chime broke the silence. New order. Customer Mr. Cole. She smiled faintly. That name had become oddly comforting. He always ordered late, always tipped generously, and never caused trouble. The kind of customer delivery drivers silently pray for. "All right, Mr. Cole," she muttered softly, accepting the order. "One last drop. Then I'm done." The neighborhood was quiet, the kind of suburban stillness that felt more like a photograph than a place people actually lived. Streetlights buzzed weakly, their orange halos trembling in the mist. She parked by the curb, grabbed the paper bag, and checked the instructions on her phone. Leave by door, no contact. Simple enough. But when she stepped out, her phone buzzed again with a correction. Please hand deliver only. Renee frowned. That was new. Mr. Cole had never asked for that before. The message felt oddly personal, like he knew she was tired, like he knew she was reading it right then. She walked up to the front door, her shoes crunching softly on the gravel. The house was dark except for a faint blue glow coming from a backroom window. She rang the bell. Nothing. Knocked gently. Still nothing. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying the faint smell of rain and gasoline. She sighed, ready to leave the bag by the door, when her phone buzzed again. Thanks, Renee. You can leave it inside. Her stomach dropped. She hadn't texted the customer her name this time. The app didn't show it until after delivery was marked complete. She hesitated, staring at the door, and realized it was slightly open. A faint creak echoed as she nudged it wider. "Hello?" she whispered, Her voice small in the hollow silence. No answer. The house looked wrong. The furniture was covered with white sheets, the air smelled stale, and the light flickering from the back room was coming from an old TV playing static. She placed the food bag gently on the nearest table and turned to leave, her fingers trembling. The moment she stepped back outside, her phone buzzed again. Delivery completed successfully. Great job, Renee. She stared at the screen, confused. She hadn't even marked it complete. The message disappeared, replaced by a new notification. Don't forget to rate your customer. The rating screen appeared, Mr. Cole's name smiling back at her from beneath 5 empty stars. As she stood on the porch, she felt a sudden chill run down her neck, the unmistakable feeling of being watched. Slowly, she turned toward her car. Her reflection in the driver's side window stared back, distorted slightly by the raindrops. But behind her reflection, she saw movement. A figure standing at the end of the walkway, still and silent. The phone buzzed again. A message. 5 stars, right? Her hand shook as she lifted the phone. The text bubble was gray, not the usual blue from customers, meaning it wasn't through the app. Her phone screen flickered as though freezing. Then the voice-to-text feature activated on its own. The robotic voice whispered from the speaker, glitching softly, "You're such a good driver, Renee." She dropped the phone and ran to her car, locking the doors, heart racing. The screen of her phone still glowed from the passenger seat, showing her own house as the next delivery location, with Mr. Cole listed as the sender. The GPS said it was just 4 blocks away. Her breath caught in her throat as she slowly turned the car key. She didn't remember ever giving her address to the app. As she drove, each turn seemed automatic, like muscle memory guiding her. The voice navigation spoke softly, almost soothingly, "You're almost home." When she arrived, her porch light was already on, and something sat neatly by her front door. A warm food bag with a receipt tucked under it. Her name was written on it in messy handwriting. She reached for it slowly, her fingers trembling. The door behind her creaked open. From the dark inside her own house, a calm male voice whispered, almost amused, "5 stars, right?" The wind screamed across the frozen plains as Eli's tires skidded slightly on the icy road. Snow flurries spiraled through the beams of his headlights like ghostly ash, coating everything in silence. He'd been driving deliveries for almost 5 years, but nights like this tested even the most patient soul. The app had promised double pay during the blizzard, but there was no surge high enough to justify risking your life on roads like these. Still, Eli needed the money. He always did. The order seemed simple: 1 meal, prepaid, contactless drop-off. The address, however, was far outside town limits. A lonely pin dropped in a patch of white nothingness. He thought it must be wrong. His GPS kept glitching, showing his car circling the same empty stretch of road. Then, through the blur of snow, his headlights caught it. A small wooden cabin, almost hidden beneath a thick sheet of frost. Smoke curled weakly from the chimney. The mailbox out front had no name, just the number 13, carved roughly into the wood. Eli parked and sat there for a moment, engine humming softly. His breath fogged the window as he squinted at the faint orange glow behind the curtains. Something about the stillness felt unnatural. No footprints, no tire marks, just undisturbed snow, thick and pure, except for the narrow trail that led to the front door, like someone had dragged their feet through it hours ago. He sighed, grabbed the delivery bag, and stepped out. The cold hit him like a wall, biting into his skin. The crunch of snow beneath his boots was the only sound in the world. He reached the door and knocked. Nothing. The wind howled in reply. He knocked again, louder this time. The door creaked slightly and then, without warning, swung open on its own. A blast of warm air brushed past his face, carrying with it the faint scent of burning wood and something metallic. Blood, maybe, or rust. He called out softly, "Hello? Delivery for, Mr. Jensen?" No response. Inside, the cabin looked old but lived in. A fire crackled weakly in the stone fireplace, and beside it, an elderly man sat motionless in a rocking chair. His eyes were open, his mouth fixed in a soft smile. "Hey there," Eli said nervously, taking a few steps forward. "I've got your food here." No reaction. The man's eyes gleamed strangely in the firelight. He looked peaceful, almost too still. Eli placed the bag on a small table beside him, unsure what else to do. "Sir, your order's here." His own voice sounded too loud, swallowed instantly by the heavy silence. That's when he noticed the plate already on the table, half-eaten food, frozen solid. The flames from the fireplace danced, but the warmth didn't seem to reach him. Eli's breath turned to mist in the air. Slowly, the realization crept in. The old man wasn't breathing. He leaned closer, heart pounding. The skin on the man's face looked pale, almost translucent, frost forming along his eyelashes. And then the man blinked. Eli stumbled backward, hitting the table behind him. The old man's head turned slightly toward him, still wearing that faint, unsettling smile. The fire roared suddenly higher, casting wild shadows across the walls. "You came back," the man whispered, the words creaking like breaking ice. Eli froze, the sound filling his chest with dread. "What do you mean?" he whispered back. But the man didn't move again. The fire dimmed instantly, leaving the room in near darkness. Panicking, Eli turned and ran for the door. But when he opened it, the blizzard outside was gone. The world was perfectly still, the night air eerily calm. His car sat idling where he left it, but there were no tracks in the snow anymore, not his, not anyone's. He sprinted toward it, slipping and gasping, flinging the door open and slamming it shut behind him. His hands trembled as he jammed the keys into the ignition. As he pulled away, his radio flickered to life, static crackling softly. A faint voice came through, the same voice. "You came back." The GPS lit up again on its own, showing a small icon moving back toward the cabin. Eli stared in disbelief. His car was driving in the opposite direction, but the GPS insisted he was turning around. He shut it off, gripping the wheel tighter. But the reflection in his windshield showed the faint glow of the cabin fire ahead, as if it had appeared again on the road in front of him. The next morning, a snowplow driver found Eli's car half buried in the drift, engine still running, headlights dim. The driver's seat was empty. Dashcam footage recovered later showed Eli entering the cabin, placing the food down, and then sitting slowly in the same rocking chair across from the old man, smiling faintly as frost crept over his skin. The sound of rain fades, replaced by the hum of static and the soft click of a recorder. The narrator's tone shifts, calmer now, almost conversational, like a quiet moment after a storm. "Before we continue," they say softly, "let's step back for a moment, away from ghosts and shadows, because not every horror story comes from the supernatural. Some come from people, the ones behind the wheel, behind the app, behind the glowing screen. We see glimpses of real faces, tired delivery drivers sitting in their cars, staring at their phones in the dark." The narrator continues, "Across the world, millions of drivers spend their nights in silence. They go where the map tells them to go. They follow voices from apps that speak in perfect, empty tones. And sometimes those routes lead them somewhere they shouldn't be." The tone is quieter here, a cinematic pause in the chaos. The visuals slow down. Streetlights passing overhead, empty parking lots, and the constant blue glow of navigation screens. Feels lonely, hauntingly familiar. The narrator begins recounting what sound like urban legends, the kind of stories passed around on Reddit threads, TikTok videos, or driver forums late at night. There's the one about a driver in Texas who delivered to a brand new subdivision, only to realize later that the street didn't exist on city records. He posted dashcam footage online, showing him talking to someone outside his car, but the camera never captured another voice, never showed another person. Then there's the infamous driveway vanisher story, about a woman who saw a food bag appear on her porch every night for a week, even after deleting all her delivery apps. The police found no fingerprints, no payment records, nothing. Just the same note each time, "Enjoy your meal." The narrator chuckles softly, though the sound feels uneasy. Of course, they call them urban legends for a reason. Stories that spread faster than truth, feeding off each other like echoes. But some stories don't stay online. The camera pans across a collection of screenshots, delivery app chat logs, and eerie dashcam stills. In one, a driver's reflection is caught in a car mirror. Behind him, the faint outline of someone sitting in the back seat. Another shows a house door opening just as the driver leaves, though no one was visible when he arrived. The narrator's voice lowers. Drivers talk about strange requests, customers who ask them to come to the back door, or to leave food inside when the door's already unlocked. There's even a story about a driver who got a thank you message from an account that had been deactivated for months. The timestamp on the message? 3 hours after he made the drop. We hear faint overlapping voices, recordings from real people, layered softly in the background. The guy's order name wasn't in the system. When I called support, they said the address was flagged. Sometimes I swear the app talks to me when it's offline. The soundscape builds gently. The ticking of car blinkers, the buzz of neon signs, the whoosh of passing trucks. It's a quiet, restless kind of horror. Not about ghosts, but about exhaustion, routine, and how easy it is to disappear when no one's looking. The narrator pauses, almost whispering, "Every driver has a story. Most never tell them. Maybe they're scared no one would believe them. Or maybe they know. The story's not finished yet." We return to the image of a driver staring out at an empty street, the reflection of his phone lighting up his face. His screen shows a new order. The address field flickers, changing over and over until finally it settles on one, the same location as before. The camera zooms in on his expression, that moment between decision and dread. The narrator breaks the silence one last time, voice low, deliberate. Urban legends, internet myths. But one driver's story wasn't just legend. It was evidence. The ambient hum cuts out completely. A distant knock echoes, hollow, rhythmic. The screen fades to black. The night was quiet except for the sound of gravel crunching under Alicia's tires. She'd been driving for the app for only a few months, taking night shifts because they paid better and the roads were empty. It wasn't glamorous, but it helped her pay for college and keep the lights on in her small apartment. The order came through just past midnight, a farmhouse 30 minutes outside the city. She hesitated before accepting. The map showed nothing but empty fields and forest in that area. Still, the pay was too good to ignore. Her headlights cut through the darkness as the city lights vanished behind her. The two-lane road stretched endlessly, bordered by broken fences and fields swallowed by fog. The air smelled faintly of wet soil and decay. She played music to fill the silence, but the static from poor reception distorted the songs into eerie, slow murmurs. By the time she reached the turnoff, her GPS signal had weakened, and the road had turned to mud. The farmhouse appeared through the mist like a relic from another time. Wooden siding faded gray, a single dim light burning in one upstairs window. Alicia parked and checked the delivery details again. Contactless delivery. Payment. Cash. She sighed, grabbing the paper bag. Cash orders were rare these days, but not impossible. As she approached the porch, the door opened before she could knock. An old woman stood there, thin and frail, wrapped in a worn cardigan. Her eyes were kind but hollow, the way grief leaves its mark after years of silence. "Oh, thank you, dear," she said softly, her voice trembling. "My son's upstairs. He's been hungry all night. Please just bring it in." Alicia hesitated. Normally she wasn't supposed to enter a customer's home, but the woman looked harmless, sad, even. The air inside the house was cold, carrying the faint scent of dust and wood smoke. She noticed family portraits lining the hallway. The same woman, younger, standing beside a teenage boy. Both smiled stiffly, as if holding secrets in their teeth. "You can leave it right there, dear," the woman said, pointing to a table. Alicia set the bag down, smiling politely. "That'll be $12.95. The old woman nodded and handed her exact change, folded neatly in an envelope. As Alicia turned to leave, the woman spoke again, almost absently. "Thank you for bringing dinner for my boy. He hasn't had company in so long." Her tone was wistful, almost apologetic. Alicia nodded awkwardly and stepped outside, the wooden floorboards creaking beneath her. The drive back was uneventful until her phone rang. The caller ID showed Support Center. "Hi, Alicia," a polite male voice said. "We're calling to confirm a delivery you just completed?" Yeah," she replied, glancing at the dark road ahead. "Farmhouse off County Road. Cash payment." There was a pause. "Could you repeat the address?" She did. Silence stretched on the line. Then the voice came back, softer. "That account's been inactive for 3 years. The listed resident, Mrs. Bennett, passed away in 2021. Her grip tightened on the steering wheel. "No," she said quickly, her voice shaking. "She was just there. I talked to her." Another silence. Then the voice returned, low and uncertain. "We'll look into it. Please return the cash to your local office tomorrow." The call disconnected. Alicia's chest felt heavy. She checked her rearview mirror. The road behind her swallowed by darkness. Against her better judgment, she turned the car around. The farmhouse reappeared at the top of the hill, its light still burning. But when she parked again, the windows were boarded shut, the porch sagging under years of neglect. No footprints in the mud. No tire tracks but her own. The air was colder now, the fog thicker. She stepped onto the porch, her breath visible in front of her. The front door stood slightly open. Inside, the air smelled old and heavy. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling. Dust covered everything. The table where she'd left the food was still there, but the bag had been opened. On the counter beside it sat the envelope she'd been given, now unfolded. Her name was written across it in faded blue ink. Then, from upstairs, came a sound, the slow creak of footsteps. A faint voice followed, soft and young, echoing down the hall. "Mom? Is dinner here?" Alicia's heart froze. The floorboards above groaned again. She backed away, eyes wide, but the stairs creaked once more. Someone descending slowly. She turned and bolted through the door, sprinting to her car. As she fumbled with the keys, she looked up at the farmhouse one last time. In the upstairs window, the light flickered, and for a moment she saw the silhouette of a boy standing beside the old woman, both watching her leave. Her phone buzzed violently. A new order appeared on the screen. No pickup location. Just one line in the delivery instructions. "Dinner's getting cold. Alicia, please bring it back." The city was alive with movement, neon lights bouncing off wet pavement as scooters and cars zipped through the night. Max had been delivering for nearly 2 years, a veteran of late-night food runs and chaotic customers. He'd seen it all. Sketchy neighborhoods, rude drunks, addresses that led nowhere. But that night felt different. It was 2:17 a.m. The streets were quieter than usual, and a fine mist had settled over the buildings, softening the sharp edges of the skyline. His latest order came from a high-rise in the old industrial district, a place known for converted lofts, artists, and night owls. The instructions were precise. Leave food inside the door. Don't knock. Don't speak. Max chuckled to himself. "Creepy," he muttered, turning his music up. The order was small, 1 burger, 1 drink, but paid 3 times the normal rate. He figured it was some eccentric rich person pulling an all-nighter. The drive was smooth until his GPS froze as he neared the building. The screen flickered, rerouted, and then went black for a second before reappearing with only one word on it. Arrived. He parked near the curb and stared up. The tower loomed above him, its windows dark except for a single light glowing from the 14th floor. The entrance was quiet, the lobby empty. The security guard's desk was unattended, though the chair was still spinning slightly, as if someone had just left. A faint hum echoed from the elevator shaft, metallic, rhythmic, almost like breathing. He pressed the button. The doors opened instantly, and inside, a single fluorescent bulb flickered like it was struggling to stay alive. The ride-up was slow, every floor number lighting up with a hollow ding that felt unnaturally loud in the confined space. His reflection in the mirror seemed slightly delayed, his movements a fraction out of sync. He rubbed his eyes. "Man, I need sleep," he whispered. When the elevator doors opened, the hallway beyond was long and narrow, carpeted in faded red, walls lined with mirrors. At the far end, an apartment door was slightly ajar, the number 1406 barely hanging on one nail. He approached slowly, holding the paper bag in one hand. The door creaked open on its own before he could knock. The air inside was cold and still, heavy with the smell of old dust and stale cigarettes. "Hello? Delivery," he called, stepping inside. The lights were off, but the glow from the hallway cast enough illumination to show that the apartment was empty. No furniture, no sound. Just an old rotary phone sitting on the floor in the center of the room. He placed the bag down beside it and turned to leave, but then the phone rang. The sharp, jarring sound sliced through the silence. Max froze. He knew he should ignore it, but curiosity got the better of him. He picked it up slowly. Hello." A voice crackled through, distorted and distant, almost like a recording. "Thank you for the food," it said. "You're early this time." Max frowned. "Sorry, what?" The voice continued, overlapping itself, echoing faintly. "You were late last time. We got hungry." The line hissed, then went dead. He set the phone down and backed toward the door, but it slammed shut with a thunderous crack. His heart lurched. He twisted the knob locked. He slammed his fist against it. "Hey, open up." Then he noticed the mirrors. They lined the walls, stretching from floor to ceiling, reflecting the dim light in strange ways. As he looked closer, he realized the reflections weren't matching his movements. The version of himself inside the mirrors was standing still, staring directly at him. Its head tilted slowly, unnaturally, as if studying him. Max stumbled backward, eyes wide. "What the hell?" A whisper filled the room. Faint at first, then layered with dozens of overlapping voices. "Stay, stay, stay." The mirrored versions began to move, one by one, pressing their palms against the glass. The surface rippled slightly, like water disturbed by a touch. Max bolted toward the door, pounding on it until his knuckles bled. He turned back, and saw his reflection step through the mirror, dripping liquid glass, face pale and eyes completely black. The duplicate smiled, identical in every detail except for its emptiness. It walked toward him slowly, each step echoing like thunder in the small apartment. "You shouldn't come inside," it said softly, voice warped and hollow. Max screamed, grabbing the metal bag rack from near the door and swinging wildly. The thing didn't flinch. His body melted momentarily, then reformed, closer this time. The phone rang again, deafeningly loud. He turned, desperate, and grabbed it. The same distorted voice whispered, "Delivery complete." The call cut, the line dead. He turned back to find the mirror empty. His reflection was gone. The door suddenly burst open, the lights in the hallway flickering violently. Max ran, not daring to look back. The elevator was waiting, doors open like an invitation. He jumped inside and pressed the ground floor button repeatedly. The numbers ticked down, 13, 12, 11, until the elevator jerked violently and stopped. The lights went out. In the reflection of the metal walls, he saw movement again. Dozens of faces, pressed against the mirrored surface, whispering the same word over and over, "Stay." When the doors finally opened, he bolted into the lobby, gasping for air. The security desk was still empty, but now the spinning chair had stopped. On the counter sat the same brown paper bag he'd delivered, untouched, perfectly sealed, the receipt folded on top. His name was printed clearly on it. Beneath his name, someone had scribbled in red ink, "Next time, don't be late." He threw the bag onto the ground and ran to his car, shaking. The mist outside was thicker now, swallowing the streetlights. He started the engine and sped off without looking back. His phone buzzed. Another order had come in, same building, same floor, same instructions. This time, the pay was double. He deleted the app the next morning. But sometimes, when his phone buzzes at night, he swears he can still hear the faint sound of that rotary phone ringing somewhere in the background. echoing like a memory that refuses to fade. The next story unfolded in a small town that barely showed up on the map, the kind of place where everyone knew each other's business, where gossip spread faster than the rain rolling down cracked sidewalks. Derek, a 29-year-old delivery driver, had moved there 6 months earlier to escape the noise of city life. He wasn't running from anything specific, or so he told himself. He just wanted quiet, a place where the nights were still, and the only sound was the wind through the trees. But quiet has a way of amplifying what shouldn't be heard. It was late autumn, the kind of night where fog rolled across the streets in thick, ghostly sheets. The air was cold enough to sting his lungs. Derek worked for a small local delivery app, one that serviced the few restaurants still open past 10 p.m. His shift was almost over when a new order buzzed through his phone. Pick up from Mama G's Diner. Drop off to an address just outside town. The instructions were simple. Deliver to the back door. Don't ring the bell. Leave food on the step. He almost declined. The address, he noticed, was the old Patterson farm, abandoned for nearly a decade after a fire gutted half of it. Locals said no one ever rebuilt because of what happened there. No one ever said exactly what. Still, the pay was triple the usual rate. Curiosity and maybe a bit of greed made him accept. The diner was quiet when he arrived, the neon sign buzzing faintly. Inside, the cook handed him a sealed paper bag without a word. Derek tried to make conversation, but the man only muttered, "You be careful up there, son. Roads get slick this time of night." His tone carried a weight that didn't sound like small talk. Derek forced a laugh and left, shaking off the chill that had crept into his chest. The road out of town was narrow and winding, lined with skeletal trees. His headlights caught glimpses of old barns and rusted mailboxes swallowed by weeds. The fog thickened until visibility dropped to almost nothing. Every shadow seemed to move. His GPS flickered, then recalculated, the voice monotone and glitchy. "Turn left, now." He followed the prompt onto a dirt path, his tires crunching over wet gravel. At the end of the road stood the farmhouse, half collapsed, its blackened roof barely intact. Derek killed the engine. The silence outside was absolute, pressing against him like a physical weight. He grabbed the bag, stepping out into the cold air. A faint smell of smoke still lingered, though the fire had burned years ago. As he approached the back door, he noticed it wasn't fully closed, just hanging slightly open, moving with the wind. He hesitated. "Hello?" he called out. No answer. "Order for, Patterson?" His voice sounded small, swallowed by the fog. He crouched to set the food down, when a sound broke the stillness. Faint, rhythmic tapping coming from inside. It wasn't random. It was steady, deliberate, like knuckles against wood. Then a whisper, faint, feminine, carried on the wind. "You came back." Derek froze. He spun around, scanning the darkness. "Who's there?" he shouted, trying to sound braver than he felt. No reply, just the soft creak of the half-broken door as it opened wider. Against his better judgment, he took a step forward. The interior was dark, except for the faint glow of a lantern on the floor. It flickered weakly, illuminating burnt wallpaper and debris scattered across what used to be a kitchen. As he stepped inside, the air grew colder, heavy with the scent of mold and something metallic. Blood, maybe, or rust. The tapping continued, louder now. It was coming from upstairs. Each tap was followed by a dragging sound, like something being pulled across the floor. He swallowed hard. "This is stupid," he whispered, turning to leave. But just as he reached the door, his phone buzzed. He looked down. A new message had appeared from the delivery app. "Do not leave until the order is received." The tapping stopped. Then, a voice, clearer this time. A woman's voice, trembling but close. "You're late." Derek's flashlight beam quivered as he pointed it toward the staircase. The steps were burned through in some places, but footprints, bare, dusty, small, led upward. He followed them slowly, each creak of the wood sounding like a gunshot in the silence. At the top of the stairs, the hallway stretched into darkness. The walls were scorched, covered in old handprints, some small, some smeared. The voice came again, from the far end. "I've been waiting." He took a shaky breath and moved forward. The last room on the right glowed faintly, the lantern light flickering inside. He pushed the door open. Inside, the room looked untouched by the fire. A rocking chair sat in the corner, moving gently though there was no breeze. And in it sat a woman, her back to him, hair long and tangled, wearing what looked like a nightgown stained dark at the hem. "Ma'am," Derek whispered. "I have your food." The chair stopped. The woman's head turned slowly, too slowly, her neck creaking with the motion. Her face was half-burned, skin melted into scars. One eye was milky white. She smiled faintly. "It's still warm," she said softly, voice crackling like embers. "You never used to let it get cold." Derek stumbled back. "I think you have me confused with someone." Before he could finish, the walls groaned. The temperature plummeted. Behind her, the wallpaper blackened, fire spreading in reverse, burning backward, like time was rewinding. Flames crawled along the ceiling, but they gave off no heat. The woman stood, her shadow stretching unnaturally long across the floor. "You left us?" she hissed, her voice distorted now, layered with others. "We waited in the fire. We waited for you." The room shook. Derek bolted down the hall, coughing as smoke filled the air. The stairs seemed longer now, endless. As he reached the bottom, the front door slammed shut on its own. Through the window, he could see his car headlights still on, flickering wildly. He twisted the handle, it wouldn't budge. His phone buzzed again. Another message. "Delivery completed. Thank you for returning." He turned, the smell of smoke thick around him. The woman was standing at the foot of the stairs, closer now, her eyes glowing faintly orange, like embers beneath ash. "We can eat now," she whispered. The lights went out. When Derek's car was found the next morning, it was still running, the engine idling quietly. The food bag was on the passenger seat, untouched. His phone, still open to the delivery app, showed one active order: deliver to Patterson Farm. Estimated time of arrival: overdue. Some nights, locals say they still see headlights winding up the old road, stopping in front of the ruins. But no one ever gets out of the car. And if you listen closely, just before dawn, you can still hear faint tapping from inside the house, like someone knocking, waiting for their food to finally arrive. The rain had stopped, but the wet streets shimmered under the streetlights as Raymond parked his delivery car outside the apartment complex. It had been a long shift, one of those nights when every order felt like it came with a small piece of dread. He wasn't the kind to get scared easily, but lately, something about his deliveries felt off. Too many strange requests, too many messages that didn't seem to come from customers. He wasn't superstitious, but tonight, the feeling lingered, a gnawing anxiety that he couldn't shake. The order had come in as a normal one, food to be delivered to a high-rise in the heart of downtown. Nothing unusual about the address. Raymond had made the trip dozens of times before. The apartment complex was old, but well-kept. The buzzer to the front door buzzed in his ears as he pressed it, waiting for someone to pick up. The crackling voice on the other end sounded different than usual, mechanical, almost distant. "Come in," the voice said, before the buzzer clicked open. Inside, the lobby was empty. No one was at the front desk, which wasn't unusual for a late-night delivery. Raymond took the elevator up to the 5th floor, pressing the button and waiting for the soft hum of the elevator to carry him up. The ride felt longer than usual, each floor lighting up with a hollow, echoing sound. When the doors opened on the 5th floor, he stepped out into a hallway that seemed to stretch forever. The building was eerily quiet. He had delivered here so many times before, but tonight, the hallways felt different, colder, the air thick with an oppressive silence. The apartment door he needed was at the very end of the hall, number 504. As he walked down the corridor, the fluorescent lights overhead flickered, casting strange shadows on the walls. It wasn't just the lights that made him uneasy. It was the feeling that he wasn't alone. Raymond arrived at the door and knocked. The sound echoed sharply in the silence. No answer. He knocked again. Still nothing. He checked the app. It said the delivery had been confirmed. He tried the doorbell. It rang, but the sound seemed muffled, as though it wasn't ringing for anyone inside. He took a step back, feeling that strange sensation that someone was watching him. But when he looked around, the hallway was empty. He pulled out his phone to call the customer, but just as he was about to dial, the door swung open. There stood a woman, pale-skinned and gaunt, with dark circles beneath her eyes. Her hair hung in messy clumps around her face. "You're late," she whispered, her voice hoarse and scratchy. Raymond, taken aback, quickly handed her the food. Sorry about that. The app said everything was good to go," he said, trying to sound normal, but her hollow stare unsettled him. She didn't take the food immediately. Instead, she stepped aside, motioning for him to enter. "Please, come inside." He hesitated. It was against protocol. He'd never gone inside a customer's apartment before, but her eyes seemed pleading, desperate even. And with the strange way she'd opened the door, it felt like something was pulling him in. Maybe it was the exhaustion from the long shift, or maybe it was just curiosity, but he stepped inside. The apartment was dark, lit only by a few dim lamps and the soft glow of a television playing static in the corner. The air was thick, musty, like it hadn't been aired out in years. The walls were bare, no pictures, no decorations, just peeling paint. The woman led him to the kitchen, where a single chair sat in front of a table. There was no food in sight, no sign of life, except for the old television and the woman herself. "Sit," she said, her voice barely a whisper. Raymond glanced at her, unsure, but something in her eyes made him sit down. She stared at him for a long moment, her eyes locked onto his as if trying to read him. The silence stretched on. Then she spoke again, her words coming slow and deliberate. "You're the one who brings the food. You always bring the food." Raymond didn't respond, his throat dry. Something about her tone made his heart race, a nervous flutter of fear in his chest. She didn't seem entirely right, and yet he couldn't pinpoint exactly what it was that felt off. And then, the silence was broken by the unmistakable sound of a baby crying. Raymond jerked his head toward the noise, but the apartment was still. No crib, no signs of a child. "What the hell?" he muttered under his breath. The woman's expression shifted, her lips curling into a smile that seemed far too wide for her face. "Don't worry," she said softly. "They always cry. It's always the same." Raymond's stomach turned. He stood quickly, backing away from the table, his eyes darting around the room. "I need to go," he said, his voice shaking. But before he could make it to the door, the lights flickered, and the television clicked off. The room plunged into darkness. The air grew thick, suffocating. The baby's crying grew louder, closer. Raymond's heart raced. He stumbled backward, his hand gripping the doorknob. He twisted it, but the door wouldn't open. A sharp laugh came from behind him, the woman's voice echoing in the dark. "You're not going anywhere." He spun around. She was standing right in front of him now, her body contorted at an unnatural angle, her mouth wide open, the smile stretching far too far. Her voice came again, but this time it was a chorus, a dozen voices layered on top of each other, each one more distorted than the last. "You always bring the food. You always bring the food." Raymond lunged for the door again, his heart pounding in his chest. He yanked at the handle with all his strength. The door finally flew open, and he bolted into the hallway, the sound of his footsteps pounding against the floor. Behind him, the woman's laughter echoed, and the baby's cries seemed to follow him, growing louder with every step. He didn't look back as he ran down the stairs, out of the building, and into the night. He didn't stop until he reached his car, gasping for air, shaking uncontrollably. When he finally caught his breath, he checked his phone. There was a new message from the app. It was from the same customer. "You left too soon. The food is cold." Raymond didn't respond. He deleted the app the moment he got home. But sometimes, late at night, when the wind howls outside, he swears he can still hear the baby crying. and he wonders if the food ever really gets delivered. There are places in the world that shouldn't exist. Places that people never speak of, hidden in plain sight, swallowed by shadows and time. For Zoe, a 24-year-old food delivery driver, it was just another job, another night. She didn't ask questions. She didn't care who the customer was or where they lived. The pay was good, and the app's algorithm never steered her wrong. That night, however, was different. The order came in around 11 p.m. A customer requesting a simple dinner for two, a pizza and some garlic bread, to be delivered to an address she didn't recognize. The address was listed as a small house just off the highway, a spot she thought was near the outskirts of town. Nothing strange, except that when she keyed it into her GPS, the app struggled to find it. Zoe retyped the address and hit enter again. The same result. The system showed no such location. But the address on the screen was clear. She debated canceling the order but hesitated. The payment was unusually high, twice her usual earnings for such a small order. She decided to give it a shot. The road leading to the address was paved, winding through dark woods. The trees loomed close, and the air felt oppressive, the kind of weight you feel before a storm. She pushed it out of her mind and focused on the delivery. After a while, her GPS started to behave again, guiding her off the main road, down a narrow gravel path that seemed to go deeper into the woods. At some point, the trees opened up into a small clearing, and there it was, a house. It didn't belong there. The house was old, clearly abandoned for years, with sagging roof beams and boarded-up windows. The porch had crumbled away, leaving only half of the steps leading to the door. The mailbox was rusted shut, and there was no sign of life. Zoe checked the order again, half expecting it to be a mistake. The address was the same. The name of the customer, however, was different from anything she had seen before. It was an old name, one that seemed out of place in the modern world, Lillian Beecham. She hesitated. The air was unnervingly still. No lights, no cars, no sounds of animals. Only the rustling of wind in the trees. Zoe swallowed, grabbed the food, and walked up to the house. When she knocked on the door, there was no answer. She knocked again, louder this time. The door creaked, and to her surprise, it opened on its own. The floor inside creaked under the weight of her first step. She stepped into a dark hallway, the air stale, the smell of mildew and decay thick in her nostrils. The only light came from an old lamp in the corner, dim but steady. "Hello," Zoe called out, her voice shaky. "Delivery for Lillian Beecham?" The house seemed to hold its breath. No response. She stepped further in, her shoes making muted thuds on the worn wooden floors. She called out again. "I have your food." The silence stretched on, oppressive and cold. Just when she thought about turning back, a voice, low and soft, came from behind her. "You're not supposed to be here." Zoe spun around, startled. An old woman stood at the entrance of a room across the hallway, partially obscured by shadow. Her eyes were wide and unblinking, her hair long and unkempt. Her skin was pale, almost translucent like paper. I'm just here to deliver," Zoe stammered, holding out the bag of food. "It's for Lillian Beecham." The old woman's lips twisted into a strange smile. "Lillian is waiting," she said in a voice that made Zoe's skin crawl. Her words seemed to hang in the air, stretched like thin threads, pulling Zoe forward against her will. Reluctantly, Zoe walked toward the woman. She stopped when she reached the doorway. The room beyond was cluttered with old furniture, pieces of clothing scattered across the floor. The air was thick with dust. But in the center of the room, sitting on a couch, was a figure, or rather, what used to be a figure. The woman on the couch was completely still, her back arched unnaturally. Her skin was gray and stretched tight, eyes wide open but lifeless, and her mouth hung slightly ajar. It took Zoe a moment to realize. It was a corpse, seated upright, frozen in place like a lifeless mannequin. "Lillian Beecham," Zoe whispered, unable to look away. The body was ancient, impossibly so. The woman's skin looked like it belonged to someone who had been dead for decades. Yet there she sat, a perfect grotesque mockery of life. Zoe felt the room grow colder. The old woman stepped closer, her breath rasping like dry paper. "You're the one who came to bring the food," she muttered. She always liked food. Zoe's heart pounded in her chest. She stepped backward toward the door. I'm sorry. I have to go." But the old woman lunged forward with surprising speed, grabbing Zoe's wrist with bony fingers. "You're not leaving," she hissed. "Not until she eats." The grip tightened, and Zoe screamed, the sound echoing through the empty house. The old woman pulled her back toward the corpse on the couch, but Zoe fought, her fear turning to adrenaline. She managed to break free, stumbling backward into the hallway. With frantic energy, she turned and fled, running through the dark house, her breath ragged in her throat. Behind her, the old woman's voice echoed, calling her name, pleading with her. "Come back. She's waiting. She's always waiting." Zoe burst through the front door, the wind howling outside, and ran back toward her car. She slammed the door shut, heart racing, hands shaking. She turned the key in the ignition, not daring to look back. As she sped down the gravel road, the house disappeared into the trees behind her. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, shaking as she checked the message that had come through. "Delivery confirmed. Thank you for bringing the meal." The app showed the address, the name Lillian Beecham, written clearly on the screen. But as she looked again, she realized something was wrong. The address, the location, the name, it was all gone. All that remained was a single line of text. "No one lives there anymore. Zoe never took another delivery again." But every so often, she swears she hears a soft, far-off whisper when the wind blows at night. She's still waiting. She's still hungry. It was just another quiet Tuesday night when Adam took the order, a usual delivery from one of the local takeout spots. He had been driving for the food delivery app for just over a year, using the late-night hours to earn some extra cash. The route was easy, the address was familiar, and the pay was decent. He didn't think much of it at first. The order was for a pizza, extra cheese, and a large soda. The delivery was to an old apartment complex that Adam had been to more times than he could count. It was a small, run-down building in the middle of the city's less-traveled streets, its paint peeling and its windows dimly lit. Nothing unusual. He accepted the order, glanced at the GPS, and pulled out of the restaurant parking lot. As he neared the building, Adam noticed the neighborhood felt eerily quiet. Not the usual hum of distant traffic or the occasional person walking their dog. The streets seemed almost empty, too empty for a city that was usually alive with activity. But it didn't faze him. He'd seen all kinds of neighborhoods, from well-kept streets to areas that looked like they hadn't seen a renovation in decades. It was just another stop, another delivery. The GPS took him down an alleyway, one he hadn't noticed before, leading to the back of the building. The narrow path was lined with rusted trash cans and old furniture strewn around as if forgotten. He stopped his car and stepped out, glancing around. The air felt heavy, thick with the kind of dampness that made the skin feel clammy. A cold breeze ruffled his hair, and he pulled his jacket tighter around his chest. He knocked on the door, and a moment later, it opened slightly, revealing a thin, pale man with dark, hollow eyes. The man looked at Adam for a moment without speaking, his expression unreadable. Adam offered a polite smile, holding up the pizza. "Delivery for, Daniel Hayes?" The man nodded slowly and stepped aside, allowing Adam to enter without a word. Adam hesitated at the doorway. "I'm just leaving it here," he said, voice a little unsure. Something about the man's gaze made him uncomfortable, but he figured it was just nerves. People acted strangely sometimes. The man closed the door behind him, locking it quietly as if expecting no one else to enter. The apartment was dimly lit, with the only light coming from a flickering lamp in the corner. The air smelled stale, like the kind of old, musty odor that clung to buildings that hadn't been aired out in years. There was no furniture, only a mattress on the floor and a small table against the far wall. Adam placed the pizza on the table, his hand brushing against a piece of paper. A photo of the man with what appeared to be a child, a small girl with blonde hair, her smile bright and innocent. The photo was faded, cracked at the edges, but there was something about it that struck Adam. It was old, very old. "Here's your pizza," Adam said, clearing his throat. "That'll be $27.50, cash or card." He trailed off when he saw the man's face change. His eyes, once dull and lifeless, seemed to sharpen, his lips curling into a faint smile. "I've been waiting for you," the man said softly, almost as if talking to himself. The hairs on Adam's neck stood up. He tried to brush it off, but something was wrong. The way the man's voice trembled, the strange intensity in his gaze. It all felt off. I'm sorry, what?" Adam stammered, looking around nervously. "Do you have the payment?" The man's smile widened, his voice dropping lower, more menacing. "She's been waiting too." A cold chill ran through Adam as he stepped backward, eyes darting to the front door. "I really have to go," he said, his voice shaking now. He reached for the door handle, but before he could turn it, the man suddenly shouted, "You can't leave!" "Not yet." The door slammed shut with such force it rattled the walls. Adam's heart pounded in his chest as he spun around, only to find the man standing in front of the door, blocking his escape. "Let me out!" Adam yelled, his pulse racing. The man remained still, his eyes locked onto Adam's with an unnerving calm. "She wants to see you. She's waiting for you. You can't leave." "Not yet." Adam's mind raced, his thoughts scrambling for any logical explanation. Maybe this was some sick prank. Maybe the man was mentally unstable. But the look in his eyes, the cold, unfathomable look, made Adam's blood run cold. He backed away slowly, trying to keep calm. "I'm calling the cops," he muttered, pulling his phone from his pocket. He was about to dial when the man spoke again, his voice suddenly soft, almost pleading. "She's gone. She's been gone for so long. She's waiting for someone to come home." The phone slipped from Adam's hand, clattering to the floor as he stumbled backward, tripping over the edge of the mattress. The man's form seemed to grow taller, darker, his features distorting in ways that didn't make sense. The shadows in the room began to swirl, thickening, consuming the space. The floor beneath Adam's feet shifted. The room itself seemed to breathe, pulsing with a rhythm that wasn't his own. A high-pitched whisper filled the air, seeping from the walls, the ceiling, the very air around him. It was a name, a single name. "Daniel." Suddenly, a voice, low and hollow, spoke from behind him, sending a shock of terror through his entire body. "You don't belong here, Adam." He whipped around to find the source of the voice, but there was nothing there. Only darkness. The shadows had grown so thick they seemed to move of their own accord, coiling around his body, tightening with every breath he took. The man's voice cracked once more, and Adam felt a cold hand, like ice, grip his wrist. "She's waiting. She's still waiting for you." The temperature dropped. His breath turned to mist in front of him. Desperation filled Adam's chest, and he fought against the darkness, trying to push his way out of the room. But the shadows pressed in, suffocating, pulling him back toward the mattress where the photograph lay. The girl's face, her smiling, innocent face, now stared back at him, her eyes wide with something that wasn't joy. The man's smile twisted into something cruel, something broken. "You should have stayed away," he whispered, his voice trembling with something darker. "She wanted you to bring the food. She wanted you to bring the meal." A sudden burst of energy coursed through Adam. He shoved past the man, slamming the door open with all his strength. He ran down the hall, through the dark building, his heart racing. The silence was deafening, the air thick with the unnatural chill of death. When Adam finally made it to his car, he didn't stop to breathe. He didn't look back as he started the engine, the tires screeching against the pavement as he sped away. The next morning, his phone buzzed with an app notification. "Order completed. Thank you for delivering to Daniel Hayes." The address was gone, wiped from the system entirely, as if it had never existed at all. Adam never made another delivery. He sold his car, moved to another city, and buried the memories of that night as best as he could. But sometimes, When the air grows still, when the silence becomes too thick, he swears he hears the faintest whisper, a name spoken through the shadows. She's still waiting. The moon hung low, casting an eerie glow over the streets as Jake pulled up to the rundown apartment complex. The night had been long, and this last delivery was meant to be quick, just another errand to get done. The address had been strange, even by his standards. The GPS kept glitching, recalculating the route as if it didn't want him to find it. But he'd gotten used to that. After all, technology wasn't perfect. He hadn't questioned it, not until now. The complex stood like a relic from another time. Its walls cracked and chipped, windows boarded up except for a few on the top floor that appeared to be occupied. The air smelled of mildew, and a strange chill hung in the air. Jake glanced at his phone one more time. The order was simple: a takeout meal from a local Chinese restaurant, to be delivered to the second floor, apartment 217. But something about the whole thing felt wrong. It wasn't the order itself. It wasn't even the building. It was the silence. He parked in front of the entrance and stepped out, the sound of his footsteps swallowed by the empty night. He took the food from the passenger seat, the weight of the bag somehow heavier than usual. As he approached the building, the hairs on the back of his neck prickled. There were no sounds of life, no cars on the street, not even the distant hum of city lights. It was as if the whole world had gone quiet just for him. When he reached the front door, it creaked open as if it had been left ajar. It didn't feel right. He hesitated before stepping inside, his breath coming out in visible puffs of mist in the cold night air. The lobby was dark, save for a dim light near the back. The elevator stood unmoving, its doors wide open, inviting him in. It was the only way up, so he stepped inside, pressing the button for the second floor. The ride was unnervingly slow. The elevator hummed, but the sound seemed distant, hollow, as if it wasn't even coming from the machine itself, but from somewhere deeper inside the building. When the doors finally opened, he stepped out into a hallway that seemed to stretch longer than it should. The light flickered above him, casting long, jagged shadows on the walls. The doors along the corridor were either closed or sealed shut, some marked with peeling numbers. He couldn't remember ever seeing an apartment building that looked this abandoned, especially not in a place so close to the city center. Jake reached apartment 217, noticing that the door was slightly ajar. He knocked lightly. No answer. He knocked again, a little louder this time, and the door creaked open further. Something inside the apartment stirred, the faintest sound of a chair scraping against the floor. He called out, "Delivery for Ms. Lindell?" But the voice that responded wasn't quite a voice at all. It was a whisper, a soft, barely audible hum that seemed to vibrate in the air. "Come in," it said. Jake hesitated but pushed the door open just enough to step inside. The apartment was dim, lit only by a few candles on the coffee table. The smell was musty, but there was something else beneath it. Something foul, like old food left out too long. His eyes adjusted to the low light, and in the corner of the room, he saw a woman sitting in a chair, her back to him, hunched over. Her long hair fell across her shoulders, but she didn't move, not even when he placed the food on the small table in front of her. "Your food's here," Jake said, his voice barely above a whisper. There was no response. He waited a moment before turning to leave, but the door slammed shut with a deafening crash. Panic surged through him. He turned back toward the woman, and this time she was standing, facing him. Her eyes were wide, black voids, and her smile stretched unnaturally across her face. "You shouldn't have come in," she hissed, her voice distorted, as though it wasn't her own. The shadows around her deepened, crawling along the walls like living things. The room seemed to grow colder, the air thick with an oppressive weight. Before he could react, her hand shot out, grabbing his wrist with a strength that shouldn't have been possible. Her fingers felt like ice, burning against his skin. "You're staying here now," she whispered, pulling him closer to her. The shadows around her grew thicker, swallowing the light in the room. And as the darkness closed in, Jake felt his breath catch in his throat, a scream rising in his chest, but it never left his mouth. The door to the apartment had been sealed shut the moment he stepped inside, and now he realized he would never leave. The faint hum of a song echoed in the distance, the last thing he could hear before everything went silent. The delivery app sent a confirmation to his phone the next morning. It was a message from the system: "Delivery complete. Thank you for your service." The address, his last known location, had been wiped from the system entirely. And the food? It was never touched. The apartment remained empty, save for the whispers of those who had come before. Somewhere deep in the building, the hum still echoed, and somewhere, someone was always waiting for the next delivery.